I'm sorry. But do you have a reservation? Carol Foster's voice was polite, rehearsed, flawless. Her eyes were not. They swept over the woman standing in front of her with the efficiency of someone trained to judge value in seconds. The simple jacket, the comfortable, worn shoes, no designer bag, no jewelry catching the chandelier light. At Etoile d'Or, wealth usually announced itself before a word was spoken. This woman arrived quietly, and that unsettled Carol more than poverty ever did. Catherine Morgan stood there feeling the dull ache in her stomach sharpen. She hadn't eaten since early that morning. A long flight. A rushed drive. Curiosity pulling her forward faster than common sense. She had arrived in San Francisco barely 3 hours earlier and had done something uncharacteristic for herself. She left her suitcase at the hotel desk, planning to come right back. A quick look. A simple walk-through. Just enough to satisfy a question that had been following her for months. She never noticed what she'd left behind until it was too late. No purse, no phone, no cards, no cash. Turning back now felt pointless, embarrassing, and somehow necessary. No reservation, Catherine said calmly. Her voice carried no desperation, though her body betrayed her hunger. I was hoping to eat something simple. Just one person. Carol's smile tightened, a fraction of a millimeter. Enough to be felt, not seen. I'm afraid we're fully booked this evening. The dining room behind her told a different story. Empty tables, perfectly set, waiting. Before Catherine could respond, a voice came from the side. We actually have table 12 open. Marcus Williams stepped beside the hostess stand, his apron crisp, his posture respectful. He'd been watching from across the room, watching the way Carol's eyes lingered, watching the woman's stillness, the kind of stillness people develop when they're used to being underestimated. Carol turned sharply. Marcus, that table is reserved. It's been empty for 40 minutes, he replied evenly. If they were coming, they'd be here by now. He glanced at Catherine, offering a small, genuine smile. Right this way, ma'am. Catherine hesitated for half a second. Not uncertainty, calculation. Then she nodded. Thank you. As Marcus led her through the dining room, Catherine felt it. The pause in conversations, the subtle head tilts, the silent math people did when someone didn't fit the room. This was her restaurant, or rather, one of them. One she had built, scaled, and stepped back from years ago, trusting systems and people to protect what mattered. Apparently, trust aged poorly. Marcus pulled out her chair and handed her the menu with the same care he gave every guest. No shortcuts, no assumptions. Can I get you something to drink? Wine? An aperitif? Just water, please. Catherine's eyes skimmed the menu. Prices she recognized, dishes she remembered approving. And the French onion soup, some bread, if that's all right. Of course, excellent choice. He scribbled it down, then paused. Would you like an entree as well? She shook her head. The soup is enough. Then she took a breath. This was the moment, the uncomfortable one, the necessary one. Marcus, I need to be honest with you. She lowered her voice, not out of shame, but discretion. I don't have a way to pay right now. I can come back tomorrow morning. First thing. I'll take care of everything then. The words settled between them like glass. Marcus blinked. Once, then again. In 3 years, no one at Etoile d'Or had ever said that sentence. People here didn't forget wallets. They didn't lose phones. They didn't ask for time. I'll speak with the manager, he said carefully. Just one moment. What happened next? I need you to see it for yourself. Before we continue, hit subscribe, like this video, and tell me in the comments where in the world you're watching from, which city and country. I believe this story found you today for a reason. Catherine watched him walk away, shoulders already tense. She didn't enjoy this part, but she needed it. Hunger was temporary. Information was not. Derek Hansen intercepted Marcus halfway to the kitchen. What's the issue with table 12? She ordered soup and bread. She's asking to pay tomorrow morning. Absolutely not. Derek didn't hesitate. And that's not how this works. It's one bowl of soup, Marcus said quietly. She seemed sincere. Sincerity doesn't pay invoices. Derek glanced toward Catherine, his eyes narrowing. Did she just walk in? Marcus followed his gaze. Catherine sat upright, hands folded, patient, not pleading, observing. I'll cover it from my shift meal if needed, Marcus added. Derek's jaw tightened. That's not the point. Standards matter. Boundaries matter. If we bend them for one person, we invite chaos. He straightened his jacket. I'll handle this. The room went quiet as Derek approached the table. Good evening, ma'am. I understand there's been a misunderstanding regarding payment. No misunderstanding, Catherine replied calmly. I explained my situation. I asked for an exception. I'm afraid we can't accommodate that request, Derek said, his smile professional, his eyes empty. A payment is required up front. I understand, she said. I was simply hoping your establishment valued trust. Derek's smile cooled. We value policy. Marcus felt something break inside him. He stepped forward. I'll pay for it. Derek spun around. Marcus, this is not your decision. It is. Staff meals are mine to use. Silence fell hard. My office, Derek snapped. Now. Marcus nodded once. He knew what this would cost him. But as he looked at Catherine, still composed, still watching, he knew something else too. Some things were worth more than a paycheck. As Derek walked away, Catherine lifted her glass of water. Her hands were steady, her expression unreadable. This wasn't about soup anymore, it never was. And no one in that room yet understood what they had just revealed about themselves. Marcus sat in the chair across from Derek's desk with the same feeling as someone walking toward a sentence already written. The manager's office was tucked in the back of the restaurant, away from the golden glow of the dining room, far from the low laughter and crystal glasses. Here, the air was colder, heavier. The walls displayed framed certificates, awards of excellence, words like prestige, discipline, standard. None of them spoke about people. Derek closed the door with excessive care, the kind of care that comes before something unpleasant. You know exactly what you did, he said, without raising his voice. Marcus kept his hands on his lap, fingers interlaced to contain the tremor. His shift didn't end for another 4 hours. 4 hours he desperately needed because rent was due in 3 days, and his mother's prescription refill was sitting at the pharmacy waiting for payment he didn't have yet. Every hour mattered. Every dollar counted. I used my staff meal. It's in the manual, Marcus said quietly. Don't pretend this is about internal policy. Derek's tone sharpened. This is about image, about protecting what we've built here. Marcus swallowed hard. Through the small window in the office door, he could see Carol watching from the hostess stand, her expression unreadable but attentive, like she was waiting to see which way the wind would blow so she could adjust her sails accordingly. Protecting from who? From a woman who was hungry? Derek's eyes narrowed. From precedents. From people who think they can walk in here without paying and leave unscathed. She didn't try to leave unscathed. She asked for time. There's a difference. Time doesn't pay suppliers, Derek cut in. Kindness doesn't cover payroll. And sentimentality doesn't keep this restaurant alive. He leaned back in his chair, the leather creaking under his weight. You've been here 3 years, Marcus. You're good at your job. You know how this place works. We're not a charity. We're a business. And businesses have rules for a reason. Marcus breathed deeply. He thought about his mother. The bills stacking up on her kitchen counter. The pharmacy line. The way she smiled and said she was fine even when her hands shook from pain because she'd skipped her medication to save money. He thought about the look on Catherine's face when she'd asked for the soup, No trick there, no performance. Just need and dignity existing in the same breath. If this place only works when everyone is treated like a suspect, maybe the problem isn't her, Marcus said carefully. Derek stood slowly, planting his hands on the desk. The gesture was meant to intimidate, and it worked. Marcus felt his stomach tighten. Careful, Marcus. You're confusing personal morals with professionalism. No, I'm remembering that we deal with people. The silence stretched between them like a rope pulled taut. Derek sighed, the sound of someone making an inevitable decision. You're suspended for the rest of the shift. Go home. Tomorrow we'll discuss your future here. He paused, letting the weight of those words settle. And I suggest you think very carefully about whether you're capable of maintaining the standards Etoile door requires, because right now, I have serious doubts. Marcus nodded. It wasn't a formal termination, not yet, but the warning was clear as glass. One more step out of line, and he'd be gone. And jobs like this, jobs that paid enough to cover his mother's medical expenses and still leave something for rent, didn't grow on trees in San Francisco. Can I at least make sure her soup gets to the table? Marcus asked. Derek hesitated. Just for a second. And in that second, Marcus saw something flicker across his face. Not compassion exactly, more like calculation. Like Derek was weighing the cost of looking heartless against the cost of appearing weak. 5 minutes, Derek said finally. After that, she leaves. Marcus left the office with his heart racing and his hands shaking. As he returned to the dining room, he noticed how the atmosphere had shifted. Conversations had resumed, but quieter, more careful. Carol was watching everything from the reception desk, her eyes too attentive for someone pretending neutrality. Other staff members moved through their tasks with exaggerated focus, like students in a classroom after someone's been sent to the principal's office. At table 12, Catherine remained exactly as before, posture upright, hands resting gently on the table, her water glass nearly untouched. The hunger was still there, but now it mixed with something deeper, a quiet sadness, not for herself, but for the predictability of it all. She'd seen this play before. Different actors, same script, and it never stopped disappointing her. Marcus approached the table, and Catherine looked up. Her eyes were clear, alert, taking in details most people wouldn't notice. The slight tremor in Marcus's hands, the tension in his shoulders, the way he glanced back toward Derek's office like a soldier checking for enemy fire. The soup is on its way, Marcus said in a low voice, but I need to be honest with you. After you finish, they're going to ask you to leave. Catherine nodded slowly. I figured as much. I'm sorry. She studied him with renewed attention, and Marcus felt exposed under that gaze, not judged, just seen, really seen, in a way that made him feel like she understood things about him he hadn't told her. Don't be sorry, she said softly. You did exactly what you should have done. A moment later, the soup arrived. The bowl was carried out by James, the sous chef, who set it down with more gentleness than usual. Like even he understood this meal meant something beyond food. The soup steamed golden, the cheese lightly toasted on top. A simple aroma, comforting. The kind of smell that makes a house feel like home. Catherine looked at it for a long moment before lifting the spoon. The first taste warmed something beyond her stomach. She closed her eyes for half a second, and Marcus saw her shoulders relax just slightly. You were hungry, weren't you? Marcus said. More than I'd like to admit, she replied honestly. She ate slowly, not for etiquette, but with awareness. Each spoonful confirmed something she already knew but needed to feel. The contrast between the care in the kitchen and the coldness at the front of house. The product was excellent. The human process, flawed. While she ate, Derek watched from a distance, arms crossed. For him, this scene didn't represent compassion. It represented risk, a crack in the armor, a precedent that could spread like infection if not cauterized immediately. Marcus stood nearby, not hovering but present. He'd been suspended, technically, but he couldn't bring himself to leave until he knew she'd finished her meal. Until he knew she'd gotten at least this one thing she'd asked for. "How long have you worked here?" Catherine asked between bites. 3 years, Marcus said. "Do you like it?" The question caught him off guard. People didn't usually ask servers if they liked their jobs. They asked for water refills and extra napkins and whether the salmon was wild caught. But they didn't ask about satisfaction or fulfillment or whether the work meant anything beyond a paycheck. "I used to," Marcus admitted. "It's a good restaurant. The food is incredible. The guests are usually kind, but lately..." He trailed off, unsure how much honesty was appropriate with a stranger. "Lately it's felt different," Catherine finished for him. "Yeah, like the rules matter more than the reasons behind them." Catherine nodded, understanding more than he realized. She'd built this place on a philosophy. Treat people well, make them feel valued, create an experience that went beyond food. But somewhere along the way, the philosophy had been replaced with policy, and policy, without heart, became prison. She finished the last of her soup and carefully set down the spoon. The bowl was empty, the bread was gone, and for the first time in hours, the gnawing ache in her stomach had eased. "Thank you," she said, looking directly at Marcus. "Not just for the meal, for treating me like I mattered." "You do matter," Marcus said, and meant every word. Catherine stood before anyone could come to escort her out. She wouldn't give them that satisfaction, wouldn't let this moment become more humiliating than it needed to be. She approached the reception desk where Carol stood, still watching with that calculated expression. "I hope you enjoyed your meal," Carol said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I did," Catherine replied, "especially the clarity." Carol's brow furrowed slightly, not understanding. Catherine turned back to Marcus one last time. "You made a difference today. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. I just did what felt right." "That's exactly how real change begins," Catherine said. Derek appeared then, materializing from the back hallway like he'd been waiting for this moment. "Ma'am, I hope you understand this isn't a recurring practice." "I understand perfectly," Catherine said, meeting his eyes with a steadiness that made him uncomfortable. "And that's exactly why I'm here." Something in her tone made Derek pause, made him look at her more carefully. But whatever he saw, he dismissed it. She was leaving. The problem was solved. The standard was maintained. "Good evening," Catherine said. She walked out of Etoile door into the cold San Francisco night. The door closed behind her with a soft click that sounded like punctuation. Outside, the air was sharp and clean. She took a deep breath, let it fill her lungs, let it clear the tightness in her chest. She walked a few steps, then stopped, turned back to look at the restaurant, the elegant sign, the warm light spilling onto the sidewalk, the promise of excellence it represented to the world. From her jacket pocket, she pulled out a small folded notebook, a pen. She wrote a few words, not many. She didn't need many. Inside the dining room, Marcus was removing his apron. His shift was over, whether he'd worked the full hours or not. Carol was whispering to another staff member, their heads close together, sharing the gossip that would spread through the restaurant by tomorrow morning. Derek was returning to his office, convinced he'd protected the establishment's standards. None of them knew yet. But this night was far from over, and the real cost of that bowl of soup was still waiting to be paid. Catherine folded the notebook and slipped it back into her pocket. She pulled out a set of keys. Not house keys, not car keys, master keys. The kind that opened every door in a building. The kind that only owners carried. She looked at the restaurant one more time. Her restaurant. And she smiled. Small. Sad. Knowing. Tomorrow morning was going to be very interesting. Marcus walked home through streets that felt heavier than usual. The San Francisco fog was rolling in early tonight, wrapping around streetlights and making everything look softer, more distant, like he was moving through a dream he couldn't quite wake from. His apartment was only 12 blocks from Etoile, close enough that he usually enjoyed the walk. Time to decompress. Time to let the tension of service drain away before he opened his front door. Tonight, the walk felt like purgatory, suspended. The word kept echoing in his head. Not fired, not yet, but suspended. Which meant Derek was giving him time to think about what he'd done wrong. Time to realize his mistake. Time to come back tomorrow with an apology and a promise to never let compassion override policy again. The problem was, Marcus didn't feel like he'd made a mistake. He climbed the stairs to his third-floor apartment, each step a reminder of how tired he was. Not just from tonight, from everything. From years of smiling at people who didn't see him. From carrying the weight of his mother's medical bills on shoulders that weren't quite strong enough. From pretending that serving overpriced soup to people who'd never missed a meal somehow made him part of their world. Inside, the apartment was small but clean. A studio with a kitchen that barely fit 2 people. A bed that folded out from the wall. Windows that looked onto a brick wall 3 feet away. Rent was $2,000 a month, which would have been laughable anywhere else but was considered a steal in San Francisco. He could barely afford it. But he couldn't afford to move either. Marcus dropped his keys on the counter and stood there in the dark for a moment, not bothering to turn on the lights. Through the thin walls, he could hear his neighbor's television. A game show. Laughter and applause. The sound of people winning things they didn't need with money they didn't have. His phone buzzed. A text from his mother. "Did you eat dinner? Don't forget to take care of yourself, baby." Marcus smiled, despite everything. She was 73 years old, fighting arthritis that had turned her hands into claws, living on Social Security that barely covered her rent, and she was worried about whether he'd eaten dinner. He typed back quickly. "I'm good, Mom. You take your medicine today." The 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again, stretching it out a bit, trying to make it last until next month. Marcus closed his eyes. That meant she was cutting her pills in half again, taking 1 dose instead of 2. Telling herself it was fine, that she could manage, that she didn't want to be a burden. He'd tried to help, had been helping, but the money only went so far, and there was never enough for everything. "Mom, don't do that. I'll bring you the refill this week. You already helped with last month. I won't take more from you. It's not taking. I want to. I know you do, baby. But you need to save. You need to take care of yourself too." He stared at the message for a long time. Suspended. 4 hours of wages gone. 4 hours he needed. 4 hours that would have covered half of her prescription refill. And for what? For a bowl of soup he'd given to a stranger. No, not a stranger. A woman who'd been treated like she didn't matter. A woman who'd asked for dignity and been given dismissal. A woman who'd looked at him like he was human, not just a uniform. Was it worth it? Marcus sat on the edge of his fold-out bed and put his head in his hands. He thought about tomorrow, about walking back into Etoile and sitting in Derek's office, about the conversation they'd have about professionalism and boundaries and maintaining standards, about the choice he'd have to make. Apologize and keep his job, or stand his ground and lose everything. His phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't his mother. It was a message from James, the sous chef. "Hey man, heard what happened. That took guts. Derek's an ass." Marcus smiled weakly and typed back. "Guts or stupidity? Sometimes they're the same thing. You good?" "Yeah. Just thinking." "About what?" Marcus paused, his thumbs hovering over the screen. "About everything. About whether kindness was a luxury he couldn't afford. About whether he'd been wrong to give away something that belonged to him for someone he didn't know. About whether the cost of doing the right thing was always this high. Just whether it was worth it. He finally typed. The response came fast. It was, Trust me. But James wasn't the one paying Marcus's rent. James wasn't the one who had a mother cutting pills in half to make them last longer. James wasn't the one who'd just been suspended and might be fired tomorrow. Marcus set his phone down and lay back on the bed, staring at the ceiling. There was a water stain up there shaped like a map of something he couldn't identify. He'd been staring at it for 3 years, and he still didn't know what it looked like. Some nights it looked like hope. Other nights it looked like a warning. Tonight it just looked like a stain. He thought about Catherine, the way she'd sat at that table with her spine straight, even while asking for help. The way she'd thanked him not just for the meal, but for treating her like she mattered. There had been something in her eyes, something that made him feel like this moment was bigger than he understood, like he'd been part of something that would ripple forward into a future he couldn't see yet. But ripples didn't pay bills. Ripples didn't fill prescription bottles. Ripples didn't keep roofs over heads. His phone buzzed one more time. Another message. This time from a number he didn't recognize. "This is Carol from Etoile. Just wanted to check in. Derek is pretty upset. If you come in tomorrow with a sincere apology, I think he might let it slide. We all make mistakes. No judgment." Marcus stared at the message. No judgment. Right. Carol had stood at that hostess stand and watched Catherine get dismissed. Had smiled that professional smile while a hungry woman was told to leave. And now she was offering him advice on how to survive, like they were on the same team, like she was helping. He deleted the message without responding. Through the wall, the game show audience erupted in applause again. Someone had won something. Marcus wondered what it felt like to win, to stand on a stage and have people cheer for you, to get a prize just for knowing the right answer. He rolled onto his side and closed his eyes. Tomorrow was coming whether he was ready for it or not. Tomorrow he'd have to walk back into Etoile and face Derek. Tomorrow he'd have to decide whether his conscience was worth more than his security. Tonight, he just needed to sleep. But sleep didn't come easy. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Catherine's face. The way she'd looked at him when she said, "You made a difference today." The way her voice had carried certainty, not hope. Like she knew something he didn't. Like she'd been testing something and he'd passed without knowing he was being tested. Who was she? The question circled in his mind like a bird looking for a place to land. She hadn't seemed desperate, despite asking for credit. Hadn't seemed lost, despite being hungry. There was something about her that didn't fit the narrative Derek had built. Something that suggested this wasn't about soup at all. Marcus opened his eyes and stared at the ceiling stain again. Hope or warning? He still couldn't decide. His phone buzzed once more. He almost ignored it, but something made him pick it up. Another unknown number, a text message, short and simple. "Thank you for your kindness tonight. It won't be forgotten. Sleep well. Marcus Williams." His heart stopped for a beat, then started again, faster. He sat up, staring at the message. How did she get his number? The staff directory wasn't public. You couldn't just look up employees of Etoile and text them, unless you had access to things civilians didn't have access to, unless you had authority that went beyond asking for soup. Marcus's hands trembled as he typed back, "Who is this?" The 3 dots appeared, stayed there for what felt like an eternity, then disappeared. No response came. He waited 10 minutes, 20. Nothing. Finally, exhausted and confused and too wired to sleep, Marcus set his phone on the nightstand and lay back down. Outside, the city hummed with its usual nighttime rhythm. Cars, voices, the distant sound of a siren. The world kept turning, indifferent to whether he kept his job or lost it. Indifferent to whether he'd done the right thing or made the biggest mistake of his life. But somewhere in that same city, Catherine Morgan was awake too, and she was making plans. Plans that would change everything. Plans that would reveal exactly who'd been tested tonight and who'd failed. Marcus didn't know it yet, but the woman he'd helped wasn't someone who needed saving. She was someone who was about to do the saving. And by tomorrow morning, everyone at Etoile would understand the difference between policy and humanity, between what was required and what was right, between keeping standards and keeping your soul. The test was over. The results were about to be posted, and not everyone was going to pass. Marcus stood outside Etoile at exactly 9 in the morning, an hour before the lunch prep crew usually arrived. Derek had sent a text at 7, "Be here at 9. We need to talk. No pleasantries, no cushioning. Just the cold efficiency of someone who'd already made his decision and was simply going through the motions of making it official." The morning fog still clung to the streets, making everything look gray and uncertain. Marcus hadn't slept well. Every time he'd drifted off, he'd woken up with that text message in his mind. "Thank you for your kindness tonight. It won't be forgotten." He'd tried calling the number back. It went straight to a generic voicemail. No name, no identification, just silence. He pulled open the heavy door and stepped inside. The restaurant looked different in the morning light. Less magical, more ordinary. The tables were bare, the chairs upside down on top of them. The floor showed scuff marks that got hidden by dim lighting during service. Everything that looked elegant at night looked tired in the day. "Marcus," Derek's voice came from the back. "My office." Here it comes, Marcus thought. The end of 3 years. The end of stable income. The end of being able to help his mother. He walked through the dining room, past table 12 where Catherine had sat, and into the back hallway. Derek's office door was open, but Derek wasn't alone. Catherine Morgan sat in one of the chairs facing the desk. She wasn't wearing the simple jacket from last night. She was dressed in a tailored navy suit, her hair pulled back, her posture radiating the kind of confidence that comes from never having to ask permission for anything. On the desk in front of her was a leather folder, closed, waiting. Marcus stopped in the doorway, confusion flooding through him. What's going on?" Derek stood behind his desk, and his face was a color Marcus had never seen before. Not red with anger, not purple with frustration. Pale, almost gray. Like someone had drained all the blood from his face and left only fear behind. "Sit down, Marcus," Catherine said. Her voice was the same one from last night. Calm, steady. But now it carried authority. The kind of authority that didn't need to be loud to be absolute. Marcus sat in the chair next to her, his mind racing. "I don't understand." "I know you don't," Catherine said. She opened the leather folder and pulled out a business card, slid it across the desk toward Marcus. "Let me introduce myself properly. Catherine Morgan, founder and CEO of Morgan Hospitality Group." Marcus picked up the card. His hands were shaking. Morgan Hospitality Group, the parent company, the corporation that owned Etoile and 15 other high-end restaurants across California, the company whose name was on his paychecks. Marcus couldn't finish the sentence. "The owner," Catherine finished for him, "of this restaurant and every other property in our portfolio." She turned her attention to Derek, and her expression didn't change, but something in the air shifted, got colder. "I arrived in San Francisco yesterday after 2 weeks visiting our other locations. I came straight here without my usual belongings because I wanted to see something for myself. I'd been hearing complaints, stories about how certain customers were treated, about how staff enforced rules with cruelty instead of common sense. I needed to know if it was true." Derek's mouth opened, closed. No words came out. "And so I walked into my own restaurant," Catherine continued, "dressed simply, and I asked for a bowl of soup. I explained I couldn't pay until this morning, not because I didn't have money, but because I wanted to see what would happen, how my staff would respond to someone vulnerable, someone who needed grace." She paused, letting the words settle like snow covering everything in white. and what I discovered was deeply disappointing. The silence that followed was the kind that happens before buildings collapse. Marcus found his voice. "You were testing us." "I was testing everyone," Catherine corrected. "And most of you failed." She pulled out another document from the folder, a printed transcript. "This restaurant has cameras and microphones. For security purposes, of course. Every conversation that happens in public areas is recorded and stored. Last night, I reviewed the footage. Would you like to hear what was said about me?" Derek's face went even paler. "Ms. Morgan, I can explain." "Can you?" Catherine's voice didn't rise, but it cut through his words like a knife through silk. "Can you explain why Carol Foster, when I walked in, looked at me like I was garbage? Can you explain why you told Marcus that sincerity doesn't pay invoices, instead of considering that perhaps kindness is its own form of currency? Can you explain why, when a woman asked for food and promised to return with payment, your first instinct was rejection instead of investigation?" She stood up, and despite being smaller than Derek, she seemed to fill the entire room. "I built this company on a very simple philosophy. Treat people well, make them feel valued. Create experiences that go beyond food, but somewhere along the way, that philosophy got replaced with something else. With gatekeeping, with judgment, with the kind of cruelty that hides behind the word standards." She walked around the desk, and Derek actually took a step backward. "You didn't see a person last night, Derek. You saw a problem, something to be managed and removed. And when one of your staff members showed actual humanity, you punished him for it." Marcus sat frozen, watching this unfold like a spectator at a play he'd been drafted into without rehearsal. Catherine turned to him. "Marcus, last night you gave up your meal. You risked your job. You stood between me and humiliation even though it cost you something real. Why?" Marcus swallowed hard. "Because it was the right thing to do." "And that's the answer," Catherine said, looking back at Derek. "That's what this entire business is supposed to be built on. Doing the right thing. Not the convenient thing. Not the easy thing. The right thing." She returned to her chair and pulled out one more document. An official letterhead with the Morgan Hospitality Group logo at the top. "Derek Hansen, effective immediately. You're being transferred to a management training program at our headquarters. You'll spend the next 6 months learning what leadership actually means. Not authority, not control, leadership. If you complete the program successfully, we'll discuss where you go from there. If you don't..." She left the sentence unfinished. The implication was clear. Derek's jaw clenched. "This is because I enforce policy. This is because you forgot that policies serve people, not the other way around," Catherine said. "You can accept the transfer, or you can resign. Your choice." Derek looked at Marcus, then back at Catherine. For a moment, something like defiance flashed in his eyes, but it died quickly, replaced by resignation. "I'll take the transfer." "Good. You start Monday. HR will send you the details." Catherine pulled out another document. This one had Marcus's name on it. "Marcus Williams, as of today, you're promoted to General Manager of Etoile d'Or." Marcus's mind went blank. "What?" "You heard me. You're the new GM. Salary is $90,000 a year, plus benefits, plus performance bonuses. You'll report directly to our regional director, and you'll have full authority over hiring, firing, and operational decisions." 90,000. That was more than double what he made now. That was enough to cover his rent easily. Enough to pay his mother's medical bills without cutting anything. Enough to breathe. "I don't understand," Marcus said. "I'm just a server." "You were a server," Catherine corrected. "Now you're the person who decides what kind of place this becomes. You passed a test last night that most people fail. You chose humanity over policy. You sacrificed your own security for a stranger's dignity. That tells me everything I need to know about your character." She handed him the document. "This is your offer letter." Take the weekend to think about it. If you accept, we'll start your transition on Monday. Derek will spend the next week training you before he leaves for headquarters." Marcus stared at the paper in his hands. The numbers didn't feel real. The title didn't feel real. None of this felt real. "And Carol?" Marcus asked quietly. Catherine's expression hardened. "Carol Foster is being transferred to a back office position. No guest contact. She'll process invoices until she decides whether this industry is right for her." She gathered her documents and stood. "Gentlemen, I'm staying in the city for the next week. I'll be dining here several times to observe the transition. Marcus, I expect you to start thinking about who you want to hire, what changes you want to make, and how you want this restaurant to feel. Derek, I expect full cooperation in training your replacement." She moved toward the door, then stopped and turned back to Marcus. "Last night, I asked if this establishment valued trust. You showed me it did. One person. That's all it takes to change everything. One person who decides that kindness matters more than comfort." She extended her hand. Marcus stood and shook it, still too stunned to form coherent thoughts. "Thank you, Marcus Williams, for seeing a person instead of a problem, for treating me like I mattered, and for reminding me why I built this company in the first place." And then she was gone, leaving Marcus standing in Derek's office holding a document that would change his life, and Derek standing behind his desk facing the consequences of treating kindness like weakness. The test was over, the results were in, and everything had changed. 3 months later, Marcus arrived at Etoile at 6 in the morning, an hour before anyone else. He liked the quiet, liked the way the restaurant felt when it was empty, like a stage waiting for the day's performance to begin. The nervousness that had lived in his chest those first few weeks had faded into something steadier. Not confidence exactly. More like competence earned through repetition and mistakes learned from. He'd made changes, small ones at first. He adjusted the reservation system to be more flexible, holding tables for walk-ins without compromising the dining experience. Retrained the front-of-house staff on hospitality versus gatekeeping. The focus shifted from judging who belonged to making everyone feel they belonged. Trained the staff on something he called the Catherine Principle. Treat every guest with equal respect, regardless of appearance or circumstance. Some staff adapted, others didn't. Carol had quit after 2 weeks of processing invoices, leaving without a word. 3 servers who'd worked under Derek's philosophy had transferred to other properties. But the ones who stayed, the ones who understood what Marcus was trying to build, they were different now. Better. James, the sous chef, had been promoted to head chef. He'd refined the menu, balancing innovation with approachability, maintaining Etoile's reputation for excellence, while making sure the experience felt welcoming rather than intimidating. The reservation book for tonight was full, but Marcus had learned to keep table 12 open. Always. It sat empty most nights, a quiet reminder of the night everything changed. But tonight was different. Tonight, Catherine Morgan had made a reservation. At 7:30, she arrived. Marcus greeted her at the door himself. She was dressed simply again, though this time by choice rather than necessity. "Miss Morgan." "Catherine," she corrected with a slight smile. "At table 12. Always." He led her through the dining room. Conversations continued without pause. No one stared, no one whispered. She was just another guest, which was exactly how it should have been from the beginning. She sat, and Marcus handed her a menu. "Can I start you with something to drink?" "Just water, please." She glanced at the menu, then looked up at him. "How are you finding it? The job?" Marcus pulled out the chair across from her. She gestured for him to sit, so he did. "Harder than I expected, easier in other ways." "Tell me." "The paperwork is brutal. The scheduling is like solving a puzzle that keeps changing shape, and I had to fire someone last week for the first time in my life." He paused. That was the worst part. "Why did you fire them?" He made a comment to a couple celebrating their anniversary, said their celebration seemed excessive because they were being too loud. In front of other diners, when I pulled him aside, he said he was maintaining the restaurant's refined atmosphere. Marcus met Catherine's eyes. I told him there's a difference between maintaining atmosphere and crushing joy, and if he couldn't learn it, he needed to work somewhere else. Catherine nodded slowly. That must have been difficult. It was, but it was also necessary. Marcus leaned back. You taught me that. Not everything that's hard is wrong. A server approached. Someone Marcus had hired 2 weeks ago. Young kid, nervous energy, but good instincts. Ready to order. Catherine ordered the French onion soup and a salad. Marcus ordered the salmon. When the server left, Catherine folded her hands on the table. I want to tell you something, she said, about why I do these tests. Marcus waited. 27 years ago, I was where you are now. Not managing a restaurant, but trying to. I'd saved every penny I had to open a small bistro in Sacramento. Nothing fancy, just good food and honest service. But I didn't look like someone who should own a restaurant. I was young, I was a woman, and I had an accent that told people I wasn't from here originally. She paused, her eyes distant with memory. I went to the bank for a loan, wore my best clothes, brought my business plan. I'd spent months on that plan. Every detail mapped out, every risk calculated. The loan officer looked at it for maybe 30 seconds. Then he looked at me and said, "Honey, maybe you should start with a food truck. Restaurants are complicated." Marcus felt anger rise in his chest, but Catherine continued calmly. I didn't get the loan. Had to find private investors instead. Took me 2 years longer to open than it should have. But I remembered that loan officer. Remembered how he saw a problem instead of potential. And I promised myself that if I ever built something significant, I'd never let that kind of blindness take root in my own business. She met Marcus's eyes. That's why I test, not to catch people failing, but to find people who see clearly, who understand that the person in front of you is always more complicated than they appear, always more worthy than your first judgment suggests. The soup arrived. Catherine lifted her spoon, tasted it, and smiled. James's recipe, he added cognac to the broth, said it needed depth. He was right. They ate in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Catherine set down her spoon. I'm expanding, she said. Opening 2 new properties next year, one in Portland, one in Seattle. I need people I can trust to run them, people who understand that this business is about more than food. She looked at Marcus directly. I'd like you to consider Portland, general manager, full equity stake. You'd build it from the ground up, hire your own team, create the culture. Marcus's breath caught. Portland, a fresh start, his own restaurant, essentially. But also, my mother, he said. She's here. I can't leave her. Bring her with you, Catherine said simply. Morgan Hospitality offers full relocation assistance. We'll move her, set her up in a place near you, make sure her medical care transfers smoothly. She'll be closer to you than she is now. Marcus stared at his plate. 6 months ago, he'd been a server trying to keep his head above water. Now someone was offering him a future he hadn't known existed. You don't have to answer now, Catherine said. Think about it. But Marcus, I want you to understand something. That night, when you helped me, you didn't just pass a test. You reminded me why this matters, why I built this company. And you've proven over these 3 months that it wasn't a fluke. It was character. She reached into her bag and pulled out something small, a napkin, folded and worn. She unfolded it on the table. Written in her handwriting were 4 words: trust, dignity, courage, growth. I wrote this the night you helped me, sitting outside on the sidewalk. These are the words I want every Morgan property to embody. You gave me all 4 in one moment. She pushed the napkin toward him. Keep it. Remember what it cost you to be kind. And remember that it was worth it. Marcus picked up the napkin, his throat tight. I still think about that night, about whether I made the right choice. You did, Catherine said firmly. And the fact that you still question it means you understand something most people don't. That doing the right thing should never be easy. The moment it becomes easy, the moment you stop feeling the weight of it, that's when you've lost something essential. She finished her soup and dabbed her mouth with her napkin. I should go. I have an early meeting tomorrow. She stood, and Marcus stood with her. Think about Portland. Talk to your mother. Whatever you decide, you'll always have a place in this company. Because you see people, Marcus. And that's rarer than you think. She started to walk away, then turned back. Oh, and Marcus, table 12, keep it open. You never know who might walk through that door needing grace. Marcus watched her leave, the napkin still in his hand. Around him, the restaurant hummed with life. Conversations and laughter, and the gentle clink of silverware on plates. People being fed. Not just with food, but with the kind of experience that made them feel valued. He looked at table 12, empty, waiting. He thought about that night, about the choice that had seemed so simple in the moment and so complicated in the aftermath. About Catherine sitting there, hungry and testing, seeing who would treat her like she mattered. His phone buzzed, a text from his mother. So proud of you, baby. Whatever you choose, I'm with you. She knew about the Portland offer. He'd told her yesterday, expecting resistance. Instead, she'd cried and told him to take it, told him she'd follow him anywhere, told him this was the chance she'd prayed for. Marcus folded the napkin and put it in his pocket. Tomorrow he'd frame it, put it somewhere visible, a reminder of what this business was supposed to be about. He walked back through the dining room, checking on tables, greeting guests, making sure everyone felt welcome. At table 7, a young couple sat studying the wine list with slight hesitation. Marcus approached. Evening. Can I help you with anything? The woman looked up. We're celebrating our engagement. We'd love wine, but we're not very familiar with the list. Marcus smiled warmly. Congratulations. Let me suggest something special that won't break the bank but will make the moment memorable. Would you trust me? Their faces relaxed. That would be wonderful. Marcus recommended an excellent bottle at a fair price, made sure they felt celebrated rather than judged, and moved on. Behind him, the couple raised their glasses, treated with joy instead of condescension. That night, after service ended and the last guest left, Marcus stood alone in the empty dining room. He thought about Catherine's question. How was he finding the job? The truth was, it was the hardest thing he'd ever done, and the most meaningful. Because every night, someone walked through that door needing more than food, needing to be seen, needing to be respected. And every night, Marcus and his team had the chance to give them that. One bowl of soup had changed his life. But more importantly, it had changed what he believed was possible. That excellence and warmth could coexist. That high standards didn't require cold hearts. That treating people with respect, regardless of who they were or how they looked, was the foundation of true hospitality. He turned off the lights and locked the door. Tomorrow, he'd call Catherine. Tomorrow, he'd say yes to Portland. Tomorrow, he'd build something new. But tonight, he'd remember the night a woman in worn shoes had tested his humanity and found it genuine. And that would be enough. Thank you for listening.